Ashley Dawn, and welcome back to my channel. I am so thrilled to share some really cool and interesting information today about indigo, crystal, and rainbow children. So if this is something that you already know you're interested in, please like and subscribe down below. I love and appreciate your support. So I wanted to describe first and foremost what indigo, crystal, and rainbow children are, kind of some of those similarities and traits, and then kind of how I work with them, because it's really fun and exciting. So let's dive on in. Okay, so I'm going to start off with the indigo children, mostly because it is said that they were born in the 80s, so maybe a little bit into that late 70s, but in the 80s, that particular decade. And there's actually a lot more similarities between these three categories than differences, but I'll first start off by explaining the indigo children. So these are kind of like the mover and shaker. They want to bust down all the systems. They don't like being put into a box. They don't like systems that are kind of not working or corrupt. And so they grew up kind of pushing back a lot. They also are incredibly empathic, as are all these children. And they're very sensitive to emotion. They can pick up on things. They're very psychic. And so when they pick up on all of these emotions around them, the environment itself, then the people added into it, they become very overwhelmed and overstimulated sometimes and then act out, right? Because they don't have the ability at a young age to understand the differences between their own emotions and everybody else's, and it just is so super overloaded, right? So remember that each one of these is not that they're necessarily better between a normal human being or an indigo versus a crystal or a rainbow child. It's just that they are different. Their brains function and wire different. And actually, there are two chemicals in the brain, and I actually had to look them up just because I couldn't remember what they were, and I'll tell you what they are now. There are two chemicals in the brain that they discovered. The University of Chicago in 2005 discovered that children born in the 80s that were kind of that, these children, new children, are kind of different. They had these two, microcephalon and ASPM. I hope I'm saying that right. And basically what they figured out is these two chemicals help to regrow and regulate brain growth. Okay, so they noticed that 70% of children born in the 80s had one of those two traits, although 30% had both. Of the 30%, they basically had an extremely high IQ. So their IQs ranged between 100 and 150, when the average person is about 100 to 110, and a genius is classified as 130. So although they may have also been diagnosed with, say, like Asperger's or ADD or all these things, they technically were hitting off the charts at their age level and stuff like that as far as intelligence goes. And so I love to point out that these children use more of their brain. It's not that they're better, it's just that their brain works differently. And I'm sure most parents that have any of these children can kind of see that they process things differently, okay? So indigo specific children, they learn differently. They're very strong-willed. They kind of push back. They can be a little bit emotional. Again, they're feeling their own emotions and the emotion of everybody else, right? And pretty much their life purpose is to break down old systems that they know aren't working. And they kind of are like, they have a strong BS like meter. They can see right through something. If they think that something's not working and the system's not working and it's not going to work, but we're still going along with it because it's how we've always done it, they'll be the first one to call BS and be like, no, we're not doing this. So they have this kind of like fierce, strong kind of energy about them. So let's dive in now to the next kind of generation here, which is in the 90s, the crystal children then kind of came about. So the crystal children have very similar traits. Again, they're empathic, they're psychic, they have some of those same chemicals in their brains, and they learn and experience life differently. But instead of that fierce kind of like mover shaker energy, they have a little bit more of that healer energy, that softness, that compassion, that nurturing. It's a very balancing between the two, because they know and feel all the same things that an indigo child does. However, they don't necessarily, they don't want to go argue about it. They don't want to go fight about it, right? But the indigo will kind of stand behind them and kind of has their back. So these are kind of the two that are moving and shaking the world a little bit through nurturing and through force. And then the third is the rainbow children, and they say that those children were born kind of around the year 2000s on even past 2010. So these children, the rainbow children, they are very connected to angels. They are very focused in global oneness. They want animals and nature, saving the planet. They're very much into how are we all going to make this work? So the indigo children stirred and shake things up. The crystal children needed to heal and focus on individuals themselves and people. And the rainbow children are really focused on the earth. And if you really step back and look at Gen Z, Gen X, Millennial, you can see these similarities, okay? All right, so although they all kind of sound very similar, it's because they kind of are very similar. People also say that a rainbow child was not originally ever human or came to earth as in a human form prior to that, so they don't have a lot of karma, which means they let things go very easily. They understand that it only really hurts them and causes them suffering if they hold on to frustrations and angers. Most of them are quite fearless, which can be really powerful because they're ready to stand in their truth at any time. So I may have been describing you. This may be a huge aha moment for you. And if you're a parent, this may be a huge aha moment for you. Typically, crystal children gave birth to rainbow children. And the need was because they didn't have any of that karma. They don't have a need for karma. So they chose families to go into that were more peaceful and more loving and more balanced, because they didn't have any lessons really that they need to learn along that factor. They're here for a mission. They're here for oneness. They're here for the shift. Now, everybody as a whole and collective, each one of these really, really contributed to the collective and raising the vibration. So at this point, we knew that indigos were about 3 in 10. So 30% of children being born had either both of those chemicals, and now they gave birth to the next generation, the next generation, the next generation. So it's very apparent and clear to me that they all had a mission to kind of get us to where we are right now. And it's also exciting to kind of consider what that next type of human being is. It's also very important to know that indigo children, crystal or rainbow, they were born into this world awakened. They didn't have to go through. Now, some of them still had karma they had to finish, but and that's why a lot of healers and mediums and energy workers and starseeds have had troubled pasts or traumas or things like, assaults or violent family situations where they had to work through that, understand that, get through their healing, and now be kind of more whole pretty much and have their vibration raised. Not so much the rainbows. They've kind of figured that out. They weren't human to be, ever really. They've already kind of went through all of that process. But for the most part, we all came in awakened. So some of the things that you will notice, either that you did or as a parent, these children are psychic. They know things without knowing. They have dreams and premonitions. They will have out-of-body experiences. They can see color and aura around somebody. They know when somebody's about to pass. They'll talk to their relatives that have already passed on. So they're, just doing mediumship effortlessly. They can even communicate a little bit more with the earth and animals. They'll know when weather patterns shift and change, whether it's going to be a concern or something small or big or whatever. These children are in touch with nature and humanity on a whole new level. And again, you don't have to listen to a word I'm saying. You can go look this up yourself. There is actual empirical evidence and scientific research supporting that these children's brains are literally wired to grow and develop differently, okay? And so that brings me to how I work with these types of children. So I don't care if they're a rainbow and indigo crystal. I don't even care. Those are just kind of labels. I just call these kids awakened. I don't even care about that. I just wanted to explain those terms in case you hear those, you've heard those before or they're new to you. But I know that these children are awakened, and sometimes they just need a little bit of that stability and structure or explanation. So when they are I'll go backwards kind of. When they're a little bit older, when they're like teenager age, junior high age, I can communicate and express a lot of these things very verbally to them. And I can explain things that they are experiencing, and we can have a full-on conversation. So I can ask them things like, what types of things do you experience? And they'll say, my dreams come true. I talk to my dead grandmother, you know? And I can explain some of those things. So that I feel like is a little bit easier in some aspects because I can communicate with them verbally, but it's also a little bit more difficult in some aspects because they already have built their limiting beliefs. They've already had some traumas in their lives and things that, you know, kind of like old bad habits, like, you know, teaching an old dog new tricks kind of thing. So sometimes I have to explain as much as I can and then let them go along their healing journey so that they can continue on and figuring all that out. So for the teens, I love to explain their clairs. So clairvoyant, clairaudient, clairsentient, and claircognizant. And just really quick, it means clairaudient means clearly hearing. Clairvoyant means clear vision. Clairsentient means you are a sensitive, you are picking up empathic information. Claircognizant means that you just know. There's no way that you would know, but you just know. So I explain these clairs to these kids so they understand which one of these is their strength. Now, they probably use them all, but typically, however they learn the most is the clair that they're going to use the most. So if they're visual, they're going to be more clairvoyant. If they're very emotional and sensitive, they're going to be more clairsentient, right? This is how they communicate with the world. They communicate with the world more telepathically. They don't have to be so verbal. And in fact, a lot of these kids don't start speaking until a little bit later, until like 2s and 3s, because they just communicate telepathically and they don't really feel like they have to speak until they realize that the rest of us can't keep up, and then they'll start using their actual voices. I also make it very clear to them that they use more of their brain. And so I explain to them that it's not that they're a weirdo or anything like that. It's simply that they use more of their brain and that other people do not experience the world or see and feel the world how they do. So they don't understand it. So they think it's strange, but it's not strange at all. It's actually advanced, right? The other thing I like to explain is how to use their bubble. Okay. So I use this term a lot. I call it bubbling up. It's when you know that you're going to go into a difficult situation, when you know that you're uncomfortable, when you feel like you're spread too thin or overwhelmed, when you're going to go into a big crowd, anytime that you want to protect your energy a little bit. Okay. When you know that you're going to be drained, you put on your bubble. So I explain to them that it is like a nice, solid kind of magical energy light bubble around them, and that in there it is nothing but love and pure light and energy, and it's beautiful, amazing space. This teaches them how to set an energetic boundary, which is powerful, because a lot of times, again, they cannot distinguish between what is someone else's emotions and what is theirs. They'll walk into a room and feel the emotional, almost energetic stain that was left over from an argument, although the room is empty. They'll feel that and all of a sudden feel anxious or upset. It teaches them what's mine is mine, what's theirs is theirs, right? I also like to use the analogy that this bubble is kind of clear, right? It's a light, but it's like clear. And the reason why I say that is because I want them to be able to see through it in a sense. It's okay for them to see that someone else is sad. It's okay for them to see that there's negativity going on outside of their bubble. That's fine. That's being connected to your environment. What is not acceptable and not okay is when they take on that sadness as if it's their own, or when they feel like there's no way for them to separate themselves from that negativity. So I kind of think of it like a window. When the sun is beating through the window, it's warm and bright and wonderful and it's great, and you can let that light in. But when it starts to rain and the weather changes and it gets really stormy and ugly outside, you don't have to get wet. Right? You don't have to get wet. You're inside the bubble. So this really helps to define their energy versus others. The other thing that I like to do is work with their strengths. So if we know that they're clairvoyant, clairaudient, whatever it may be, they need to kind of take ownership of that and feel like they can stand in that power and that truth and use that as a skill and an ability to do anything it is that they want to be and do to grow up to be, right? So if they are more clairvoyant and they need clarity on making decisions or anything like that, they can go within, meditate, and they'll see little visions. If they're more clairsentient and they need to pick up on what's going on with somebody else, a feeling or emotion, maybe they are a massage therapist, maybe they want to become a teacher. They need to feel if the kids are getting it, if they're confused, if they're lost, if they're sad, if they're distracted. And sometimes you can't just see that on somebody's facial expressions or body language. If they can tap into that energy a little bit, they can get more information out, making their job better or easier or better at their job, because now they understand what they need to do and how they need to change certain things to get the children's attention more, something like that, right? So you can use this, all of these things you can use at any time. The other thing is meditation is huge by this point. They absolutely have to meditate. Absolutely have to meditate. They will be a emotional basket case and feel very lost if they do not. They need time to themselves, space to be alone. They need to separate from crowds and friends and groups to recharge, okay? So it's important for them to go inward. It's important for them to meditate. This is how they connect more with their clairs. This is how they connect more with their guides. And they will feel more whole, secure, and they will have clarity, and they will feel more grounded. So meditation is absolutely necessary, especially at this age. They can start it even younger, but by a teenager, they should be fully capable of meditation. Okay, so that was kind of teenagers. The rest gets a little bit simpler. That's why I started with the teenagers, and I've used terms already that you should now recognize. So if you were, or if you have a child that is kind of in the age range of like 8 to 12, again, we can communicate with them a little bit more verbally, right? Because they understand some things, but they aren't quite as cognitively developed as maybe a teenager. So we need to incorporate some more fun things, something to keep their attention, certain things like games and things like that. So here's usually how I approach working with an awakened child who needs a little bit more guidance when they're in that age range. So like 8 to 12. I still explain their clairs, although I may ask them more questions or ask them questions where they can kind of tell me what they feel. And because this gets them to talk about it in a very safe, open, understanding environment. I definitely talk about bubbling up. That's definitely something I talk about. They have to understand what is their emotions and what's others. This will also slow down or even stop some of their emotional outbursts, again, because they're getting confused between what is theirs and somebody else's. So we can teach them boundaries and bubbling up with their energy. And it protects them. It's a security thing, right? When they feel overwhelmed, they can put their bubble up really strong and feel secure in that sense. And the other thing that I did not do by explaining with teenagers, but I can verbally, but with kids, I will talk about using their energy voice. Okay, so what I mean by that is you've got your bubble on and that's great, but what happens when you need to almost push a situation away? You're feeling overwhelmed, it's too much, you're around a lot of people, or let's say you're in a bullying situation, or they're seeing things that they don't want to see or experience, maybe certain shadows or things like that. They need to know that they can stand in their own power, that they are these magnificent beings of light, and they are fully capable of having the experiences that they want and pushing anything away that they do not want. The thing is that they haven't discovered that yet, right? And so this is what having an energy voice is. And so I work with them and the bubble and kind of bringing up that bubble and that light. We'll play with what I call an energy ball, where we literally use energy and play with it in between our hands. And honestly, right now, let's just do this. I used to do this with my students all the time. So if you just put your hands kind of loosely together and pretend like you have a little bit of a ball between your hands, kind of just like that, okay? And you can kind of like squeeze it a little bit, run your hands back and forth, close your eyes for just a second, quiet your mind, and just feel what that sensation is right between your hands. And you can kind of feel, it almost feels like two little magnets. Your hands might tingle a little bit. You'll actually feel a little bit of that aura or that energy, right? So I teach them what that feels like. You're feeling energy. You're feeling your own energy right now, right? So when they feel that, they might be able to visual see it themselves if they're clairvoyant, right? But I explain it to them and say, this energy is what your ball is made up of, right? Not everybody can see it. Maybe they can't even see it, but they can feel it usually. But they can push anything out and away with their energy, but they have to do it. Here's the kicker. They have to do it with love and light, which is very hard when you're experiencing something negative, like a bullying situation or seeing a shadow that makes you uncomfortable. By pushing them away aggressively or violently is exactly the opposite of what we need to do, because we're now we're shrinking our aura. Literally, our frequency and vibration is now shrinking, and we're dropping into that third dimensional experience of life frequency, and there we react. We become very reactive out of fear, and that's not at all what we need. What we need is to push that away and say, you know what, I see you. But I'm in my happy little bubble and I want nothing to do with you. I will send you away with love and light, my friend, because, you know, we're just not on the same wavelength. I see you, and that's enough. I don't need to be a part of this. And they can push that away, okay? This also gets them to stay within that higher vibration and staying really healthy and bright, which is a beautiful, beautiful place and where they need to stay, so that they don't get kind of sucked into that three-dimensional, heavy kind of way of life, and that becomes very difficult for them to kind of navigate through. Okay, so the last little group is the little guys, the wee little ones. They're like little, like 8 and under, okay? And so what I do with them is 100% games. This has to be something positive. It has to be something fun. And I want them to understand, I'm teaching them a little bit about who they are in themselves, but I want them to feel like they are confident. I want them to feel like they can stand in their power and their truth, and that they are fully capable of you know, being who they are, whoever that may be, right? And so here's some of the games I like to play with them. So I like to, again, I'll teach them how to do their little energy ball. I teach them how to, like, we kind of pretend like pushing and throwing the ball away, like pushing it away with love and light. That kind of teaches them that push away thing. And I might even use visual aids. Now, I can use visual aids with any age range, but of course the little guys, sometimes it's better to use visual aids. And I always ask their parents what they're comfortable with. I never want to push anybody outside of their comfort zone, especially if they have really strong beliefs, religious beliefs. You know, so I always make sure that this is okay with the parents first. But I may incorporate things like a pendulum, cards, crystals, a dowsing rod. What else did I put down? Plants and animals. Oh, they love plants and animals. You can literally set a plant in front of them and ask them to talk to the plant, and they will literally tell you your plant is dry and thirsty. And I'll be like, yeah, I haven't watered them all week. You know, they are so empathic, right? The other thing that they also can do is playing with an aura. So you can have them like run their hand over me, over their parent, anything, the plant, and they can feel the energy. They can even feel weaknesses and excess or deficiency in the energy. They will tell you, I feel a dark spot in this area, and it's from an old injury or a blocked chakra. They're amazing. Kids are amazing. They will tell you, I mean, mind-blowing things, right? So again, the point in doing a lot of activities with them is to kind of teach and train them that they can feel this stuff. It's real. Not everybody sees it. Not everybody feels it. But this is still very normal. Might not be to everybody else, but this is very normal. And again, it's to get them to understand energy, to feel confident and comfortable in it. So if you guys have any questions about this stuff, please comment below. And again, they usually only need a little bit of support, because they will blossom and bloom. They may go into doing some things like healing, like mediumship. They may not. They may be an engineer. They may be, doctors, who knows, but they will always have their purpose, their life purpose, and their core to support them. They will help the planet, animals, and people. They will create things through their creativity. They will create things that are more sustainable, that are, good for the planet, easier for other people to get, let's say, maybe things that aren't as expensive, using better materials, non-toxic. That is what they will do. So yes, they can be a healer of people or the earth or animals or whatever they are going to do, but they will always use their abilities, like their clairs and their psychic abilities, to push them forward, and no matter what they do. Okay, so I hope that I explained all of this. I feel like this was kind of a longer, bigger video, but I was really excited to share this with you guys. And hopefully, if you guys, again, have questions, let me know. Please like and subscribe. I love seeing your guys' comments. It's so wonderful when I get, people that really resonate with me. If there are things that I mentioned that just hit you in your heart chakra, hit the little like heart button. And again, if there was anything that was kind of confusing, some of the facts and things that I said in the beginning, the descriptions of the indigo, rainbow, and crystal child. Again, that's just like broad information. Don't get too hung up on that. Be open-minded and just kind of, I hope that you were able to kind of experience and understand some of the other descriptions and things like that. And the purpose for me doing this video was really to explain that these kids are out there and sometimes they need a little bit of support from those of us that have kind of gotten to a point in our lives where we do use energy often, regularly, daily, just so that they can, you know, feel like they're supported. So anyway, I will leave you with that. So till next time, love and light, my friends.